Today I'm going to destroy one of the biggest lies ever told to black children about slavery. I was told that the great Abraham Lincoln and the Northerners decided out of the kindness of their heart that slavery was wrong and needed to end to save humanity. This is a lie. The truth is, a black man named Nat Turner is the real reason why we were freed. Black people freed themselves. What a revelation this was to learn. And I learned it alone in a library, not in a classroom. So who is Nat Turner? What did he do? And what did they do to him? And how did that change everything? Let's get into it. On the evening of August 21st to the 22nd, 1831, an enslaved preacher named Nat Turner launched the most deadliest revolt in U.S. history. Over the course of the day in Southampton County, Turner and other enslaved black people unalived over 60 white slave owners. Hundreds of federal troops and thousands of militiamen got together to stop the uprising. They found several participants, except for Turner, and a manhunt began. He was hiding only miles away from the Travis farm where the rebellion began for 2 months. And then on October 30th in 1831, Benjamin Phipps came upon Turner, according to the Richmond newspaper. And Phipps raised his gun and Turner emerged from the foxhole and surrendered. Dozens stood trial for their participation in the rebellion. More than 50 convicted and sentenced to death by the collection of 20 judges who were all slaveholders. In addition, revenge-minded white mobs lynched blacks who played no part in the uprising. Historians have estimated that mobs unalived between 100 and 200 enslaved people who had nothing to do with it. Since it was getting out of hand, slaveholders that wished to protect their enslaved property after the revolt, they had to put an order out prohibiting the killing of the enslaved in an attempt to rein in the vigilantes. After Turner's arrest, he was taken to Southampton County, a small town called Jerusalem, present-day Cortland, Virginia. 6 days after his capture, he stood trial and was convicted of conspiring to rebel and making insurrection. He was sentenced to death, and Turner was hung from a tree, November 11th, 1831. Trigger warning for what they did to his body. His body was given over to the surgeons for dissection. He was skinned to supply souvenirs such as purses, and his flesh made into grease, and his bones divided as trophies to be handed down as heirlooms. His head was cut off and given to one of the physicians as a souvenir. Even though Turner and his followers had been stopped, panic spread across the region. In the days following the attack, 3,000 militiamen and vigilantes unalived more than 100 to 200 suspected rebels. In a letter written a month later from a man in North Carolina, this is what he said as it pertained to the rebellion. The insurrection of the blacks have made great disturbance here. Every man is armed with a gun by his bed nights. And in the field at work, a great many of the blacks have been shot, their heads taken off, stuck on poles at the forks of roads. Some been hung, some awaiting trial in several counties, 6 in this county. I expect to see them stretch their trial next week. There is no danger of their rising up again here. The response to Nat Turner's rebellion highlighted a key difference between the North and South's views on slavery. Both sides were terrified. The Southern response was different from the North's response. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the Southern states, especially Virginia, enacted stricter laws regarding enslaved people. These laws included prohibiting the education of enslaved people and restricting their movements. The fear of further revolts led to the increase of force used to control the enslaved people. Fears about slave uprisings and many white Southerners reacted by becoming even more brutal and staunchly pro-slavery. They believed that the only way to maintain order and prevent further revolts was to uphold slavery and restrict any actions that may lead to it being abolished. The rebellion, in their view, reinforced the necessity of slavery for the stability of their society and, most importantly, their economy. The Northern response was different. Their fear led them towards self-preservation. For abolitionists in the North, Nat Turner's rebellion was seen as a dramatic example of the brutal realities of slavery.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about one of the biggest lies ever told to black children about slavery. The idea that Abraham Lincoln and the North freed black people out of the kindness of their hearts. But what if I told you the real reason slavery ended was because of a black man named Nat Turner, a man who led the deadliest slave revolt in US history? This speech has been making waves online and the reactions are just as powerful as the history itself. Some are praising it as an overdue truth, while others are calling it divisive. So who was Nat Turner? What did he do and why is his story hitting so hard today? Let's get into it.
Further evidence that slavery needed to be abolished for the sake of their own white survival. Abolitionists argued that the existence of such violence was a direct result of the system of slavery. At the same time, some northern critics of the rebellion feared its violence and potential to provoke greater conflict. While they opposed slavery, some believed that violent uprisings like Nat Turner's could lead to greater violence in the future and undermine the moral cause of abolitionism. They were afraid that black free people would retaliate, would seek revenge even after being freed. Abolitionists in the North, they advocated for the immediate emancipation of enslaved people and the abolition of slavery across the United States. For them, the rebellion served as a stark reminder.
Nat Turner was an enslaved preacher who believed he was chosen by God to free his people. On the night of August 21st, 1831, he and a group of enslaved black men launched an uprising in Southampton County, Virginia, killing over 60 white slaveholders. His rebellion sent shockwaves through the country, but the response was brutal. Turner was eventually captured, executed, and his body was discredited in horrific ways. Hundreds of black people, both those involved and those completely innocent, were murdered in the violent backlash. This speech has people talking because it flips the traditional narrative on its head. Instead of seeing black people as massive victims waiting for white savior, it highlights their own fight for freedom. The speaker claims that Nat Turner's rebellion forced the North to confront the reality that slavery wasn't sustainable, not some moral awakening by white abolitionists. And let's be real, most of us never learned this in school. Many were shocked to hear how Turner was canned, dismembered, and his remain turned into survey. This wasn't just about punishing one man, it was about sending a message to any black person who dared to resist. The reactions to this speech are wide. Some people are saying this changed everything I thought I knew about slavery. Others feel betrayed and they wasn't taught this history in school. One person tweeted, "So we freed ourselves, wow, they really hide this from us." Another commented, "This is why they don't want us reading history. If you knew how hard our ancestors fought, we did never settle for crabs." Of course, not everyone is on board. Some critics are calling it revolutionary history, arguing that Lincoln and Union still played the biggest role in ending slavery. Others say highlighting Nat Turner's violent rebellion is dangerous, as it could justify violence today. This isn't just about the past, it's about how history is taught and who gets to control the narrative. The story of Nat Turner's rebellion forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Why was his story erased or watered down in textbooks? Why are so many black resistance movements painted as terrorism? Why white-led revolts are seen as a patriotic? It also raises a bigger issue: who really benefit from the history we taught? Because when we change the story, we change the way people see themselves. And maybe that is exactly why they didn't want us to know the truth. So now that you know the truth about Nat Turner and his rebellion, what do you think? Should the history be taught more openly in school? And do you believe black people freed themselves, or do you think the North played a bigger role? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you find this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because the more we learn, the more we can rewrite the narratives that have been used to control us for centuries. For more deep dives into hidden history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. See you in the next one.